Hey everyone, welcome to DokusCore. My name is Dokus, and today in this video we're going to do an installation of the pre-build and showing you how easy it is to get DokusCore running on your computer. First we're going to check out where you can get the DokusCore files. Then we're going to install the database. We're going to install the server files. And we are also going to install it via TxAdmin. If you want to skip specific parts of the video, you can do that via the timestamps in the description. All links to all web pages that I'm going to visit will also be in the description. Keep in mind that I am installing this server locally on my own computer, so not a server host, and I'm also installing it on Windows for this tutorial. Later down the project, we will also provide you a TxAdmin recipe. We will also give you a Docker recipe for running DokusCore within Linux on a Docker container. And of course, we will also make a tutorial for installing DokusCore on Linux. But for now, we're going to do it for Windows. So fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. So first up, how are we going to get the files? Well, you can get the files in two different ways. You can get it from our Discord, then you go to the pre-built channel, and in the pre-built channel you find a link to our Google Drive. You just go here, click on the download button, and then click on download anyway. This is too big to be scanned for viruses. If you don't like to download it from our Google Drive, you can always go to our GitHub, then click on server pre-build, and we most certainly recommend using the server pre-build instead of just downloading all individual plugins and then putting it all together. If you download the pre-build, you can be set up in, like I say, around 10 minutes. So we click on the server pre-build, then we click on code and download the zip, and we're just going to download that to anywhere. For me right now, the desktop. This is also, however, the only way that we distribute files. So if you get files from a different source, then please don't use that. Only download it from our GitHub or our Discord. I have now downloaded the server pre-build. We don't need it right now. First, we need to install the database. For the database, you basically have two options. You have MariaDB and XAMPP. I myself prefer MariaDB, and that's also the database that I'm using to develop. And why? Because if you don't install XAMPP correctly, you're gonna run into some troubles. Also, if you don't install it as a service, it will not start up with your PC. And if you try to close the control panel, you hit a whole bunch of errors. MariaDB in that sense will just install immediately as a service, will always run with your computer and will not give you that whole control panel and hassle with it. However, if you are running web servers on your computer using XAMPP, you can just use XAMPP for running DokusCore. That is absolutely no problem. If you want to be 100% sure that you're installing your server pre-built correctly, then we recommend using MariaDB to make sure that everything is one-to-one with what we have. To download MariaDB, we go to the browser and we're going to type in mariadb.org/download. Then here at the version, we're going to select MariaDB server 10.11.1rc. The operating system is going to be Windows, the architecture is going to be 64, and the package you can leave at MSI. We click on download, and we just download it anywhere. Before we install MariaDB, and especially for XAMPP, is you need to turn off your user account control. So we open Windows Explorer and we type in UAC. This prompts the user account control settings. We open it and you will find it most likely like this. You're going to drag this big slider up to the bottom and then we click OK. And at the prompt, we're going to click Yes. What user account control does, it protects your Windows so that applications cannot just make changes in your Windows. For a database installation, however, some files need to be changed inside your Windows folder, and thus they need to have access to that. Example, when user account control is not deactivated, often runs into troubles as it's unable to install certain modules that you need to run your services. And that's why I recommend MariaDB over Example. Now that the user account control is turned off, we can start to install MariaDB. So we're going to double click on the installation.exe and we're going to say next. We agree to the license. We say next. You do not need to change anything in here. We say next. Now this part is important. If you're going to run the server locally on your computer, you do not necessarily need a password to the database, as you're not going to be making an outside connection to the database on your computer. However, if you are running the server on a VPS and people are connecting to your server is live, we do recommend using a password. I'm going to show you what you need to do later in the video if you turn on a password in here. But for now, I'm going to install it as root with no password. So I'm going to uncheck this box and just hit next. If you do not know what this is, I would suggest leaving it as it is. By default, this is just as perfect. Depending on your own installation, it could be that you need a different port or that you want to rename the database. You can just rename the service to anything you like. It will not impact anything. The port, however, will. I'm just going to leave it as default and hit next and hit install. So now the installation is finished. We just click on finish. MariaDB automatically installs a database browser called HeidiSQL. This is what you're going to use in order to handle your data in a database in an easy way instead of using the PHP MyAdmin. However, if you are using XAMPP, HeidiSQL does not get installed automatically. So therefore we go to the browser, type in HeidiSQL.com, and then we click on downloads, and you're gonna install the download and install the installer 3246-bit combined. This will also give you the HeidiSQL browser. Now if I open the HeidiSQL browser, you're gonna find it like this, completely empty. You can say new, and then you can give it any kind of name. It does not matter what kind of name you give this. Now this is important. The root is the user that's going to connect to it. As you have seen before, I have installed it on the root with no password. So in my instance right here, I'm going to leave everything as it is. If you have changed that part, if you have set a password, let's say the password is 4 times 9, then you're going to type in 4 times 9 right here. If you also have changed the root to, for example, administrator or a different name, account name, sometimes a VPS does give you a user and password for the database. This is the place that you're going to fill it in. Depending on what VPS you're running, and mainly I'm talking right now on Windows, it could be that the libmariadb.dll does not want to open your database. In that instance, you can switch to libmysql.dll. This is often also the same thing that you have to do on Linux. I'm just going to leave everything default as it is right here. I'm just going to click open. And here you have the database. There is nothing in here yet. Don't delete anything that's in here by default. We're going to come back to this shortly. Now for installing the server locally, normally on your computer without TxAdmin. We're going to take the server prebuild.zip that you have downloaded from GitHub. Within here you find the prebuild.main, and within here you find a folder called server with some extra information right here. What we are going to do is we are going to create a folder, just gonna call it my server, and I'm gonna drag the server folder into the my server folder. Why I'm doing it into a double folder is whenever you use TxAdmin and you start it, TxAdmin will create default folders and files within the root directory of your server. So right now, this is my root directory of the server, and that is always one directory up from where the artifacts are. If I would just have direct the folder on my desktop, it would have created these files on my desktop too. So if you want to keep things organized, place the server folder within an extra folder and everything stays together. Now the other things that we need later is going to be the database itself. So we're just going to extract that, and basically the rest we don't need. If you want to have more instructions, you can read the text file. The database file is the file that we are going to insert into the database. So back to the database. What we're going to do is we're going to highlight DokusCore. Then we go to the Query tab. The only thing that you have to do is drag this file into the Query tab, and you will see that it now holds a whole bunch of text. We're just gonna click Run, and this will insert the whole database. Whenever done, you can delete this information. Again, highlight your database, and then click on Refresh. After that, you will see that all the tables of DokusCore are inserted. A quick reminder, everything that has a underscore is system data, information that should not be deleted. If you ever want to do a server wipe, very easy. Just click on the DokusCore, go to Database, click on Animals, or whatever is standing at the top, and then hold Shift and click the last entry that does not start with an underscore. Just highlight it all, right click, empty tables, OK, and then your whole server is reset. Please do not delete anything out of the underscore tables, because if you do so, DokusCore will stop working as it needs to. For the database, this is done. We can close it out. Now the only thing we have to do is configure the server files. So for that, you're going to open your editor. In my occasion, that's going to be Atom, as that is my favorite editor. We're going to drag the server folder within here so I can see all the files. And then you see here a artifacts.zip. We already have given you the artifacts that you need to run the server, so you do not have to download that from CFX. However, if you download it from GitHub, it could be that the server artifacts break, then you still need to download them, and the link of that will be in the repository of our GitHub. So we go to server, and then we going to right click on the artifacts, and we're going to extract here. You can also double click on it, and then highlight all the files and drag it into this folder. Keep in mind, if you're not running Windows 11, you cannot just open a zip file like that. For that, you need to go download WinRAR, and you can do that via rawlab.com. So if we go to rawlab.com, downloads, and then you take the Windows.64-bit version and just install that. You don't need to change anything in the settings, just click yes, 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 and then it will be installed. From that moment on, you can open the archive and just drag all the files into this folder right here. You do not need to delete the zip file and the text document that we have created. It will not conflict with your server. Now that this is done, the only last thing that you need to do is configure the CFG files. So let's go over them very quickly. The admin files is basically not needed. The only people that you're going to set in these files are, for example, the owner and the developers. Only the people that need to have the permission to restart plugins within their client, F8 console, directly on the server. This is not used for any kind of admin commands or whatever in DokusCore. This is only to give people access to restart plugins within their client console. The credentials, of course, the name of your server and how it looks in the server list. So that is how you're going to configure that here. The server is set to 48 people because by default we have set OneSync on. Keep in mind that OneSync only runs in infinity on redm. So don't try to start legacy, you will run in a lot of problems. Just leave it like it is right here. It will automatically start infinity. Then you can also go to 48 people, otherwise you're stuck at 32. With a OneSync license, of course, you can up this number even higher. Here you can also set the tags so that it is easier to find your server in the server list. Set your Discord, and of course set the banner. This is the picture that people see whenever they're downloading the resources. Here you can also change the logo, and the current game build version that we're using is 1436. You can use 1491 as the latest, but it does have some issues where, for example, the NPCs become passive. You can hit them, they go into fight mode, but they will never fight you. They will just be staring at you. So for that reason, we leave it at 1436, but you can up it if you want to. The SV Master 1 is disabled, but if you do enable this, keep in mind that your server will not be listed on the server list, even if you have configured your ports correctly. Below here, you see the versions for the DokusCore pre-built version and the DokusCore version. Please leave this as it is. We will change that for you whenever there is an update, and then here you can see if there is an update, yes or not. This also contributes to sending you a update notification in the console if it does find any kind of conflicting version. Next up is the license file. Within the license file, you're going to put your keymaster key and your Steam API key. These are both important. Of course, your master key, otherwise without your server won't run, and this Steam API key the server needs in order to fetch users' Steam ID. This is the unique ID that we use to distinguish between players. Next up is the MySQL file. This is the important file. Just as we talked earlier about the database, when you set your own password and your own username, right now you can see here that the username is set to root, but there is no password in there. So if you change the username to something completely different, or if you use a VPS that has its own username, of course you're going to type that in right here. I'm gonna leave this as root because I'm using root. If you want to enter in a password, the only thing you do is just you're gonna type password equals, and then you just type the password. As explained before, I was using the example 9999, so that is exactly what you're going to place in here also. That is what you need to do in order to make a correct database connection. I have it as default just root with no password, as I am running my server locally. So this is what I need. The resources and the server file you basically do not have to touch. The resources folder, of course, as the name says it, holds all the plugins that we are running in DokusCore. The server file basically only initiates these other files, so nothing gets changed in here. However, some VPSs give you a specific IP address to connect to, and then you can set this IP to that. Leaving it to 0000 means that you're going to use localhost, so it's going to take the IP directly from the computer. It could be that your host wants to change your port. The default port is 30120, but it could just be that they give you a port that is like 30122. That is where you can change it in here. That is pretty much basically it. If you want to configure DokusCore even further to your liking, you can do that within DokusCore itself. For that, you go to Resources, the core, then DokusCore, and then the DokusCore plugin. You find a folder called Configs. Within Configs, you find a folder called Core and Modules. Everything that has to do with the framework itself and DokusCore, it's going to be located in Core. All the plugins, the configs of the plugins, are not within the plugins itself. They are located centralized in the Modules folder, so you can change that all here. That is out of the scope of this video. I'll make a later video about that, but that is where you can configure the server to your liking. Now that is done, the only thing we have to go is to the server, to the data folder, and then run the DokusCore.bat. You will see that some things are unable to run. That is completely normal. These are stuff from 5M itself, redm, 5M CFX. This will always happen the first time that you run the server. So do not be alarmed with it. This will install some packages. You do see some warnings. Also, again, you can ignore that. That's nothing to do with DokusCore. It's all CFX on that part. And it's now installing everything it's missing for its default plugins, like the chat, for example. Whenever that is all installed, you will see that in the console that everything is installed. And often the last message that you see is that the chat is installed. So you can now see that this chat is being built. We're just going to wait for that a little bit. And whenever we get the message that the chat is installed, we just restart the server. So now we see that the chat is installed. We're just going to close out. We're going to reopen DokusCore. And now you can see there are no errors, no warnings, and DokusCore will just start as it's supposed to. In the console, you can see if there is updates on the plugins. So if we're going to wait for 1 second, now you see a list of all the plugins that are installed in DokusCore. If any of these plugins are shown in red, you will also see the current version and the new version in different colors. That means that there is an update on GitHub and you can update your plugin. Below also you will see a message here that we are in alpha, beta, alpha, how you want to call it, and that you are able to use the server, but you have to keep in mind that not everything is built. A lot of the plugins that you would like to have, you have to convert them quickly into standalone so that you can use them within the DokusCore frame. The frame itself is ready to be used on a server. The frame itself will be stable and will not cause you any issues. And now for TxAdmin. Basically, everything what we have done before is exactly the same. What we are going to do now is an extra step. So we're going to open the server folder, and then within the artifacts, if you scroll down, you will find a exe file that's called fxserver.exe. So we're going to double click on that, and that will prompt us this, and it opens your browser. If it doesn't, just copy the link right here. Let's see, it's just copy the link right here. It's localhost or with your IP, and then open it in your browser. You will see a pin code right here, and if the pin code is exactly the same, just say link account. You're going to link it to your account. If you did not log in, however, you had to log into the forum of CFX first. We're just going to create a password quickly and say, yes, I have read the TOS. Now it says here, change me. So let's say just DokusCore. It doesn't matter what you fill in there. And then you have to say an existing server data. And now it's going to ask you for where are those data folders. So what you're going to do is you're going to the underscore data in your server folder. So what you're going to do is you go to the underscore data in your server folder. This is the path that TxAdmin asks. So we're going to copy that and paste it in here. It automatically finds the server.cfg. And as you see here, it file was detected and it's correctly, so we can continue. When we're all done, we're going to say save and service stop. Same thing applies. You will see some warnings. You will see the server building the first time. There is here SV underscore enforce game build 1436 and the game name RDR3. So what you're going to do basically is copy these two lines. We're going to go to settings, FX server, and then what we're going to do is we're going to just paste this in right in here, right like this. For both, we're going to put a plus in front of them, and put them back onto one line like this. One sink is going to be on with infinity, and then just save it. The only thing you now need to do is to restart the server, confirm, and you will now see that the server just restarts as it should. And this is what you do with TxAdmin. As explained before, if I now go to my server folder, you can see now there is a txdata and a start bat file. So this is the bat file that you're now going to use to start your server. And this is also how you configure TxAdmin. So this is pretty much basically it. So to recap it, first you're gonna get the files from either our GitHub or a Discord. We do not distribute our files on any other platform at this current time. If we do so, we will notify you in Discord. Then you're going to install the database. We recommend MariaDB over XAMPP, but XAMPP is usable if you know how to use it correctly. If you're quite new to this, we would recommend MariaDB. And then you just unpack the server files, you unpack the artifacts, and then you configure your CFG files. From that moment on, you can just start the bat file, or you can configure TxAdmin as we showed you in the video. That's pretty much it. You can do it within 15 minutes and you have your whole server running without any problems. If you do find any bugs, if you have any questions, if you need help, or if you have suggestions, you can always go to our Discord, what will be discord.io/DokusCore, and you can let us know there. We are always ready to help whenever we have the time. I hope this video helped you guys setting up your server correctly and fast. If this video helped you a lot, then please thumbs up and give it a like, share this video, and let us know what you think of it underneath this video or in Discord. Me, as well as the DokusCore team, wishes you a lot of fun with the DokusCore framework. My name is DevDokus, and until next time.